Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Richard Walsh. He's a strategic coach. He's got a military background. He teaches clients how to use their use physical fitness, their mindset to improve their strategic coaching, their vision, and overall performance. And I'm really happy to have him on the show to inspire, educate the audience. So, Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. You start off by introducing yourself, what you do, and I'm really excited to delve into the conversation about your company.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I've been in business 30-ish years, 35 maybe. Coming out of the Marine Corps back in 87, I started the business, working for myself, got all that figured out, and did pretty good for 20 years, did really, really good. It was the best of what I did, and things were going awesome till 08, 09 hit, then everything collapsed, and I collapsed with it. I lost everything. I lost my home, my business. I had 6 little kids at the time. So we had to kind of restart, reprime the pump, so to speak, get going in a whole different direction. And we did. We scaled a couple new businesses, started doing really well, even after losing everything. And then people started asking me how I did it. And that whole thing began the mentoring process. Well, I did this and I showed them, well, what are you doing? I started helping them. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you go from mentoring, which is free, to coaching, which is paid, right? So I said, well, I might as well start a coaching business. And I wrote a book. I wrote a best-selling book called Escape the Owner Prison. And I wrote that about kind of my journey through all that stuff and being trapped by my business, meaning that if I didn't open the door, the business didn't run. I could take a week off here and there, maybe 2 weeks, have to call in every other day to check. I had people working for me, but I really hadn't put the business together the way it needed to be. It wasn't systemized. It wasn't self-running. I didn't have people with authority in there, right? I just kind of let them do the work and made sure they did it. So that wasn't a really good plan. So, part 2 became, let's do this so it can run itself, so I can have freedom. I can be with my family. We wanted to homeschool our kids all the way through and everything else. They were just starting to get to that age. So I made that happen. And again, by doing that, I figured I saw these patterns that most businesses suffer from. And that's they start, Chris, the first 2 years, and you got to work really hard, right? You got to figure everything out. You're going to wear 9 hats. You're going to roll through this thing, and there's no getting around that. There's no magic pill that isn't work when you start a new business. So we get that. But the problem is, next thing you know, 10 years has gone by, and you've repeated the first 2 5 times. And that's why you're stuck. You've never been able to scale. You've never been able to delegate, never been able to automate, and you're kind of stuck doing all the work. So I started really recognizing that pattern, and that's when I came in with my tactical and strategic solutions and really started turning these businesses around. Not turning them around in the sense that I started giving them freedom, right? I started getting those owners where they could delegate properly, and people could take that delegation, actually run with it and do well, not just tell someone to do something and have them figure it out. Right. So once that all got dialed in, we started just seeing lives changed as a business owner, because we all get into business for freedom, right? To control our time, to make more money, to make impact, right? So my whole big movement now is helping 10,000 business owners create freedom, profit, and impact in their business. And that kind of brings us up to where we're at today.
Yeah, really great introduction. And because you alluded to a lot of different things. And so, the first thing was, what do you mean by owner prison, and how do you escape that?
Yeah, so the owner prison is like that. So you begin and you're doing everything because you have to. But the problem is, if you're not able to create systems in your business, duplicatable processes that you can put people into so they can run with the ball, right? You don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to stand over. You have to check every time they do it because they don't really know how to do it your way. That's the prison. You can't leave for a month and not call in because the place will burn down, right? You're just, it's going to be crazy. You'll have nothing left when you come back. So a lot of people get in that. Now they're making money, but they just can't break away. The problem, Chris, is they feel that the business will only run with them. Only they can do it the best. That's the big thing. And I get it. Like, you're really good. I make the assumption with every owner I work with, you are the best at what you do. It's just an assumption I have. You better be the best, because that's really who I work with, is the best. But if someone can do it 95 or 97% as good as you, your customers will not know the difference. Okay. That's the first step. So turn that person loose, and then train them up the next 5 to 3%, right? What do they need to do to be as good as you? Because you're not a unicorn. You're not the only guy who can do it the greatest. So have some confidence in your own ability to teach someone and their skills and let them do it, because that's where your freedom will come from. It's really awesome when it happens.
In a follow interesting is follow-up question, because what you alluded to is working on the business versus working in the business. This is the E-myth. So the other question I have for you is because I want to expand upon you talked about systems and processes, but earlier on you said there are certain patterns that owners fall into that cause them to get stuck. What are those patterns?
So they have a fear of hiring because I don't have the money. That's always, I can't afford anybody, right? So that's a big one. And that holds them back. Man, that slows growth like no one's business. That is probably the number one thing that traps you in your business, right? They also never get help. And I mean by help is whether that's a coach or get good counsel around them. Do you have any people who have been where you're going and us, when we become successful, just like you're doing this podcast, Chris, we share with others. We'll help you. If you're an entrepreneur trying to come up, I help a lot of people. I love to see them get started. I love to, let me help you get going. So they're there. I never asked for help my first 20 years. I mean, I had billionaire clients give me advice. And I'm like, what do you know? You don't build water features. I build water features, and just, they were right about everything. And the whole thing collapsed because I'm an idiot. Okay. I worked twice as hard and it took twice as long. I got there, but really, I really didn't get there. Right. And if you get help, you can compress time, right? You can stop making the bad decisions, costing mistakes, right? You can stop doing the dumb things that you realize right after you do them, that was really dumb, but it cost me $5,000. Right. So, that kind of stuff. So the patterns, they never ask for help. They don't know how to hire. Okay. They don't have the budget because they haven't been pricing properly. So another thing is they never price correctly. Never do they price correctly because they want to get work. Right. And I understand that. And I can be a little harsh. I'll say, well, that's great if you're 14. Okay. And you're pushing a lawnmower. That's great. Go hustle and get some grass to cut from the big guy. That's all good. But we're an adult here. You build, again, my assumption is you're great at what you do. So you build or provide great service or great product. So you need to understand your value and drive the value of that product with your sales. Don't sell by number. Don't sell by price. That's a race to the bottom. You'll destroy your business. You'll never get out of that trap. It ends up costing you your business. It really does if you don't price properly. So those are a few of the main things that you'll see over and over again.
It reminds me, because when I was in training, I trained through the financial crisis. I trained through COVID, and it was interesting was, these hospitals that are struggling and they cut their budgets, marketing, advertising, a lot of companies. And, one interesting thing I heard was someone was saying during these times, these businesses, they should double down on their marketing. And, so it's kind of the counterintuitive thing to do. So the other question I have for you is because, in the kind of traditional method, you had processes and, building a team. A lot of it was people dependent. So what sort of systems and processes these days is software and artificial intelligence versus actual people? Because I've got mostly my systems and processes are software now.
Right. I think it's really important. And this is another thing when you're trapped in the owner prison, it's hard to look forward. You're not seeing, when you hear about AI, you're going to think Terminator and it's the end of the world. Okay. Now, it could go that way. There's a lot of propensity for evil, but there's also a lot of good things we can use it for, right? So there's 3 things you do in your business: automate, delegate, and eliminate. Okay. Automate, that's what you're talking about. There's so many opportunities in a lot of different ways, not just AI for writing emails or getting good subject lines or tracking numbers or doing whatever, right? You got virtual assistants. You can hire someone who's perfectly qualified, speaks great English, lives in the Philippines. You pay him $6 an hour, and you can get that 24/7. Right now, you don't have that in-house person who's going to call in sick and etc. The whole people experience. And I'm not saying we need to eliminate people altogether, but there's a lot of stuff you do in your business that you can farm out, right? And that's what you want to do. And then delegate is really important too, like I was saying a little bit earlier, but you have to be prepared to delegate. You don't just get someone and tell them to do something. They have to have a detailed lane to run in so they know how to succeed. What does success look like? How can they, when you give them the ball, how can they run for the goal line, right? That's what we want to do. And then the elimination part is great. We want to eliminate cost overruns, redundancies, right? Things like that. But you also want to eliminate you. Okay, you want to eliminate what you're doing in the business. You want to be focused on what we call your 5%. That's the 5% of the business only you can do. Visionary stuff, bringing in the big clients, right? Doing that kind of, understand the growth, where you're going to go, market share, stuff like that. That's what looking at AI. What can I use in my company that's coming down the pike? Because now you have the bandwidth to do that. You have the mind space, right? So those are some of the things.
Yeah. Very like, and I was joking with my friend the other day. We were like, yeah, AI and software can run 24/7. It's like basically a fixed cost. And we can productivity, efficient, very efficient. And like when you have people, you have to deal with fights with your spouse or your others, take your kid to the doctor, all this other stuff, which is interesting. So next question is, because how has the mindset in business, especially with being in the Marine Corps, there's a talk about the good, how it's helped you in business, as well as some of the because the Army's very regimented, and sometimes business you have to be flexible. Talk about the mindset that's helped you.
Yeah, so the Marine Corps, the big thing, what we're about is mission accomplishment, right? So we're not into failing. All right. So you kind of get that. You learn how to do whatever it takes to achieve the mission, right? To accomplish that. No matter how grueling, no matter how long it takes, you'll get it done, right? Whatever the cost. So I kind of took that with me. Not kind of, I guess I did. I kind of had it. They enhanced it. That's a big part of what I took with me to get things done. Now, you're right about the flexibility aspect. Like, the Marine Corps is a little different than other branches because we're about adaptability. Not that they're not, but that's one of our prime directives. You adapt and overcome. Okay. Because everything is screwed up all the time. Okay. No battle plan ever survives the first shot. Okay. It's like that goes for anybody. Okay. So if you understand that, you better have contingencies ready. You better be able to think on the fly. You have to do that to adapt. And business is like, worse than war. I call it the endless war. Business is the endless war. You're at battle all the time. That's why we're honing entrepreneurial warriors on the battlefield of business. That's what we do as a coaching company, right? We get these guys ready to get in it every day and mix it up because you have to. And that flexibility and adaptability is critical. So I think I got all three. I really got that dialed in well for me from the core. And then you get out, and sometimes you don't even know it. Then all of a sudden you realize, well, this is the same thing. It's just business. So we started doing it that way, and that's really helped. Plus, but the other side, you said the negative side, like I said, I'm a little thick and didn't ask for help. Okay. You got that part too. Okay. Get it done no matter what. And you're probably going to be by yourself. Okay. There's only one of you left. You're still going to, okay. So I'm that, like, this is, I'm the one man guy. So that was not so good. And that was more in probably my own head, my own philosophy. It was ego driven. It was pride driven. It really was. So here's a warning. Take your ego and take your pride and lock it in the proverbial box. Okay. Humble yourself. Get surrounded with wise counsel. Okay. Ask for help. Hire the coach. Spend the money early to save yourself a ton of time so you can get the success that much faster.
Yeah. Well, and then, because a lot of the entrepreneurs on this podcast, they've had a military background, and it's especially when it comes to training your mind and your body, it's really a lot of entrepreneurs, they really put a lot of focus into their sleep and their emotional, mental health so that they can perform at their peak. So I love this, and kind of talk about, giving back and how you balance like family and your relationships and kind of business as not just to accumulate and just, but actually to kind of help
Right.
people and solve problems.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So we talk about getting trapped in owner prison. We got a hot mess in our business, right? We got to do everything. We can't scale. We can't get the time, right? Okay. But then someone walks up to you and says, "Oh, you know what you need? You know what you need, Chris? You need work-life balance." And then they walk away from you like they just said some lofty, they just enlightened you, right? And you're going, "Yeah, you want to tell me how to do that?" And they don't tell you because they don't have a clue. Okay, they don't have a clue. They just it's a catch little thing people say. So, but guess what? I have clues. Okay, I can tell you how to do it. All right. Then the first thing you have to do, and it's called the 5 F's. Okay, balance comes from the 5 F's. It's faith, family, finances, fitness, and friendships. Those 5 F's are what going to give you your work-life balance. But here's the problem. If your business is a hot mess, taking all your time and everything else, you can't address the 5 F's. You have to fix your business first, get that dialed in. And then when you have the margin of time, then you go work on your faith, work on your family, work on your finances, work on your fitness, work on your friends, right? Now you can do that, but don't think you got this crazy business that's taking 80 hours a week. And then you're going to add those 5 things on top of that. It's impossible. Okay. But the little guy who said you need work-life balance, they think you can do it. They've never done it, but they think you can do it. So you can't do it. Okay. Fix your business because that's your income generator. That's how you live. Don't quit your business, go get a job so you can work on the 5 F's. That's ridiculous because you're an entrepreneur. You're made to do this. You built this business. All you have to do is correct it, systemize it, get it going. Then you have the life of your dreams. Then you can work on those 5 F's because faith, everyone's got their level of faith, right? Wherever they're at on that. That's great. That's a big thing. Family is next, right? Now, in my order, it's my wife and I, then our 6 kids. Okay, we come first. Okay, the kids don't come before my wife and I. Okay, we had to fix that. Like, nope. And you know what that looks like? Here's an example. My wife and I have a nice little conversation at the table. My son, Augustine, comes up. Hey, mom, can I get it? And I said, whoa. Okay, you don't interrupt us. You hold on. When we finish talking to each other, you can ask if you can speak. Okay, like you have to put that priority in that this relationship is important. We're the mother and father. Teach them a little respect, but also understand the rank, right? This is what it is. You wouldn't do that whether it's in the, and I'm not saying it's military, but you have to create that, right? So because they're going to have to do it when they get married and everything else and have kids, right? So that's a big thing there. But then we get into finances, critical, right? That's the number one cause of divorce, right? So think about that. Now add a messed up business. Okay, like you're working all the time to keep that going and you can't get time away and you're not really watching your finances because you're like paying everybody else first. You're paying yourself last because that's what you think you're supposed to do. You're making these sacrifices for the good of the company. Yeah, your wife's probably not too thrilled about that. Okay, so or your husband, whatever direction it's going, I'm telling you, it doesn't work. So that's going to crush relationship. So you're going to hope the kids come and break the conversation because it's just going to be about money all the time. Okay. So you're going to hope they interject just to break the tension. Okay. So you got to get that dialed in. So remember, I always tell people anything you don't pay attention to goes away. Okay. That includes your wife or husband. That includes your money. And it can even include your children. Right. You have to pay attention to stuff. So get that dialed in. Then we go into fitness. Okay, fitness and health, fitness and nutrition. This is a really, really important factor and I've been victim of it. I've always worked out. Marine, I'm a champion boxer. I'm a black belt. I do all this stuff. I train people and it's all good. But I've had times where the business got so stressful, I'm getting three meals from a window. Give me the next thing, and all of a sudden I'm a 300-pound land tuna. I'm like, what happened to me? Start working out again, get back. But again, it's stress, it's the business, it's all this other stuff, but you've got to focus on the nutrition and the health, okay, and the fitness. You really got to, because yes, it keeps your mind sharp, but physically you can move, you can operate, you've got the energy, the alertness, and that's part of it. You got to make your workout a routine. It's got to be 4 or 5 days a week. It has to be. We have a saying, if you're not fit, you're not fit to lead. And it hurts people's feelings, but it's just the way it is. Okay. I mean, if you got two people, one guy's obese and one guy's lean and mean, and you're asked to follow one of them, which one are you going to follow? Okay.
Yeah.
We all know the answer, right? We don't have to say it. We all know what the answer is. So, and I'm not saying you have to be an Adonis and spend all this time being narcissistic in the gym. What I'm saying is have energy, be able to do things. See, my philosophy is, can you do for two? If I had to grab my son and carry him down 2 flights of stairs and a half mile down the road, can I do that? Or am I going to have a grabber and die at the bottom of the stairs? Okay, because I'm unfit. So I have to also provide and protect my family, as that's my role. So I got to maintain fitness and skills. I keep all my skills up. I box, I do all that stuff. So today I love it. So part 2 of that is the nutrition. You can't out train a bad diet, right? So whatever you're stuffing in your pie hole, okay, this is where it happens. It happens with what you eat, because you can work out all you want. It's not going to matter. So just start making the little changes, start getting more whole food. A friend of mine, Chris, he coined this phrase. He made this thing up. It was the funniest thing I ever heard. We were talking about it. He goes, well, I just do the green face diet. I go, the green face diet? What's that? He goes, well, if it didn't grow, like it wasn't green or had a face, I don't eat it. Okay. So he's not getting stuff from boxes and things, So it's kind of funny. So with the green face diet, that's simple to follow, but you can figure out your own way. But really, it's a critical part to leadership, guiding a company, guiding your family. You're the example. Remember, your children, more is caught than taught. They will watch what you do now. You can tell them to eat healthy, but if you're not, they're just going to do what you did. You're the default. Even when they get older, they're going to do what they saw you do. If they saw you being healthy, eating the right thing and making them, like I make them smoothies, protein shakes, juice. We do fresh extracted juices. I make that for all the kids. I make a half gallon a day for them. Everyone's getting and they run out the door with, and it tastes great, right? So you build those habits just like you would do for yourself. And then finally, you got friendships. Okay. Now friendships is everyone's got their thing. I have a very small friend circle. Okay. My joke with my kids, I said, well, if I lost 3 fingers off this hand, all my friends could still fit on it. I said, I'm good. I'm good. But I just keep that circle very tight. So I call them my trench buddies. Guys always have my 6, no matter what, they're going to be there for me. So that's always going to be a small number. Now I have other circles. I have other friends, acquaintances, networks, things like that, because that's business and that's life. And I do that. But the people who really are close, who have the number, can contact me whenever, that's a very small number of people. So, but you want to be able to at least cultivate that. And a lot of times, an entrepreneur, you're trapped on your island all by yourself because entrepreneurship's lonely. So that's the 5 F's. How about that?
Yeah, really fascinating. Just reminds me of take advice from people that have done what you are doing, and because I know colleagues, some of my colleagues, they're like, their nutrition is not the best, and some of them are smokers and alcoholics, and they're telling patients not to smoke and drink, and so it's like in one ear out the other.
There's a big debate you'll see on things. They'll talk about trainers, personal trainers, fitness trainers. Can they be fat or they got to be super fit? Doesn't matter. And it's you can't believe the battles between the two. Okay, well, this is a knowledge they know, and this, but they're a slob. Okay, they don't do what you have to do what you teach. Okay, that's coaching in general, I think. And business coach, whether it's business coaching or health coaching, you have to do what you teach. If you don't do it, you don't live it. Come on, there's a loss of legitimacy there. It's hard to be an authority or a leader when you can't live what you're speaking.
Yeah. How can people find you and reach out to you and find out more about you?
sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Best place to go. One-stop shop, sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. And I'll tell you what, Chris, let's do this for your audience. If they want a copy of Escape the Owner Prison, you can see it, the audio version. Okay, I'll give them a free audio version if they go to my website, sharpenthespiritcoaching.com, go to my contact, send me a 1-sentence email. Say, Richard, saw you on Chris' show. Love to get a copy of the free audiobook. Done, I'll send it to you. Okay, just because they're your listeners. Okay, so they get that. And here's the best part. They get to hear me speak for 2.5 more hours as I read the book to them. See? So the benefits are endless.
Yeah, awesome. And for all the listeners, I direct you to check out Richard's socials, give him a like and follow. Email will be in the show notes so you can check out the free audiobook. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Chris. This was great. I had a lot of